Canceling student debt has been talked about all over the media recently. You got Elizabeth Warren, the senator, talking about canceling student debt and how now is the time to cancel student debt. I have said some things that go against this idea, to put it lightly. If you follow me on my Instagram or on my Twitter, I say quite a bit of things about college because I think I got a bit of a bias. Well, I know I have a bit of a bias and I have a bit of a chip on my shoulder because I was part of a generation that was right in between the iPhone coming out. So when the iPhone came out was 2007, and I think I was around 16 at that time. So I was the generation that was a flip phone was super cool when you had a Motorola Razr, and then, I also got to be part of this tech boom as well. So I'm kind of in that unique range here. And I happen to think that college is extremely outdated and overpriced. It's two big zeros. Outdated, overpriced. And I guess that's a O, not a zero, but I'm a college dropout, so you got to bear with me here. The reason I disagree so strongly with Elizabeth Warren, who, by the way, went to Harvard, and between her and her husband, I believe they have an over $10 million net worth. So it's kind of ironic that she flies in private jets and it's worth like $10 million and went to Harvard, that she wants the average American to be paying for those who got to enjoy college. Going to college is a luxury, especially when you get this big old check from the government where it's so easy to get a student loan. The reason the cost of college has skyrocketed is because the loans are so easy to get. When you're young and you're 18, you just graduated from high school, you're able to just get a $100,000 loan to go to a college of your choosing. It's wrong because the secured debt factor of it is overlooked. The worst part about these student loans is that they are unforgivable. They are secured debts, so to speak. And the security on this debt is you as a person. You can't even pass away and get out of it. It's not like a credit card debt. A credit card debt is an unsecured debt. That credit card company took a risk based on your credit and said, we'll give them a line of credit. Now, if you mess up, you can go bankrupt. It's not a good idea to go bankrupt, but you can, and it's not going to be with you for the rest of your life. You can move on. You made a mistake. They made a mistake. They gave credit to somebody that they shouldn't have at the credit card company. But that's not the way it works in our government. The way it works is they give out these pretty much insane loans, in my personal opinion, because it's pretty hard for me to get a loan of these sizes. But they're just, any 18-year-old, you got good grades, here's a crazy loan for you. And basically, the 18-year-old thinks to herself or himself, hey, I get to enjoy this money and I don't have to think about it right now. I get to go to college and I'm going to I have the golden ticket when I get out of college. I got this fancy degree. It turns out they're pretty common to get a degree nowadays. So you need at least an MBA now, which is going to cost more debt to get your MBA. And then when you get your MBA, you're in a situation where it's still hard to get a job. And if you do get a job, it's $100,000 a year. Maybe you got lucky. You got one of those $100,000 a year jobs. Well, guess what? Now you're a W-2. So you don't actually make $100,000. You make somewhere around 60, 65. And you don't even get to see that money first. It's automatically taken out of your checks. You ever get one of those checks and go, Medicare, social, where did this money go? That's crazy. That's the problem, is you're giving these loans out to people that are not business savvy yet. And that's why we're in this crisis here. And the other crisis is that we trusted the government in the first place to be in charge of giving these loans out. Then the problem becomes the more money that you give the government to spend on schools, they try to find things to spend that money on. They're so good at spending money that they spend too much money and they run a deficit. And then they come back to the citizens and ask for more money to spend for the overspending that they did. It's wild. It's mostly property taxes, I believe, that goes towards paying public schools. So when I bring up the idea of defunding, colleges, I'm talking about getting the government out of college. So hear me out here. I think that the government being in college makes it worse and more expensive for the middle class and the poor to get into to being rich. I think it actually makes it worse that the government is in there, because here's the problem. You ever meet somebody that's pretty well off and they go, oh, well, my Ben here goes to private school. He goes to private school. because they can afford to put their kid in private school because they didn't want their kid to go to public school, which is a government school. The more the government is involved in these colleges, the more the government is involved in all of these different school systems, the more spending they're going to do, and the worse. And look what happens when they're in charge of things. Look at the way that UPS is and FedEx is compared to the Postal Service. The Postal Service is still running on Windows 93, I think. Is that even a year that Windows was around? Windows 93, I think, is what they're running over there. Their camera systems at the Postal Service I think they're so old that they might actually be worth more money because they're vintage cameras that don't work at all. Their cars are from, I think, 1982. That's the way the government runs things. When the government is in charge of things, they don't have any incentivized structure on somebody to compete and make that system better. That is what comes from this. So when I see the idea of forgiving student loans, I think to myself, who's going to pay for it? Because the government was so quick to give those loans out. Usually it's the credit card company that takes it on the chin because they made a mistake and they gave a bad loan out. But what they're going to do is they're going to go to those who are working hard, the average American, and say, hey, we need you to pay these bills here because we decided to forgive all these loans that we shouldn't have given out, but we did. And then we also made the cost of college really expensive. So now that when they defaulted on the loan, we're going to make it even more expensive for you to get them out of it for us here at the government. You see how this is a problem here? But right now, Elizabeth Warren says right now is the time to forgive student loans. Right now. Interesting, because right now is when inflation has been going up more than expected. The cost of living has gone up 5% when they said it was supposed to be much less than that. But now they're saying it's 5%. It's just a transitory thing. It's not a big deal. And the next one, they're going to say, 7, 8, 9, 10%. Oh, but it's transitory. It's not that big of a deal. Then it's going to be 15, 20%, in my opinion. That's what I see it just being a perpetual problem. The only way that you stop the problem is by just finding out who created the problem in the first place. And it's very easy to find out who created the problem in the first place. You want to know what would be better than forgiving student loans and spending more and putting us into more debt? How about you just don't tax the citizens for 3 years? You take in, at the government, they take in $3.5 trillion roughly per year in revenue. So all the kids that get out of college, that they got a job, the ones that are lucky and got a job, and they're saying that the people are going back to work, right? According to Janet Yellen and Poof Powell, the people are going back to work, and they don't need to have to keep poofing money in there because people are going to go back to work, and then they can raise interest rates, right? If that's the case, well, the better scenario would be don't tax the kids that are getting a W-2. How much money, when you get your check, when you look at that W-2 statement, or you look at your check every month, I know I did when I was a waiter, I'd look at it and go, wow, they took $2,000 out. I could really use that $2,000 there. It would be a lot more than these stimulus packages, wouldn't it? Probably enough to compensate for inflation going up to 5%, right? Probably a lot more than these $1,400 checks if you just got to keep the whole W-2, if you got to keep all the money that was deducted automatically from your check. Excuse me. But the funny situation is that's only, excuse me, even it gets me, makes me burp. Anyway. But this is just common sense. It's just my way to break it down to prove that I think that the more government spending, the worse the situation is. Because if they just didn't tax for 3 years, all these kids that are in debt could actually pay off their debt a lot faster, because they'd be getting in the money from their job and they get to keep all of the money and not get 35-40% of it taken out. They would keep that would go towards paying down the debt. Maybe the government should make the interest rate lower. Maybe the government should make the banks have to pay more interest on capital that it holds for the citizens. The banks get away with giving us less than 1%, 0.1% on our money. But if we want a loan from the big banks, it's 8%, 12%. If we're lucky, maybe if we tie into this huge long-term loan against a house, which is an asset, if you have an asset to tie into it, maybe they'll give you a 4 or 5%. But if we give them our money, they won't even keep our ice cube frozen. If our ice cube's freezing at 5% annually, and it seems to be only going up, the interest rate, so they won't even keep our ice cube, if the ice cube is $1, frozen for us at the big banks. That's what they should be fighting for at the government. They should be talking to all the big banks and saying, hey, you and I here at the central banks And the commercial banks, we kind of messed up. We diluted the currency that they're paid in. Their wages are about the same or going down. And at the same time, we're trying to get them back to work. And we diluted their currency on top of that. So they're paid in a currency that is diluted in value. So maybe we should help them keep their ice cubes frozen. Maybe that might be a good idea. Maybe we should have the big banks that have been making a fortune through all of this because the stock market skyrocketed. All assets have skyrocketed. So the big banks have made a fortune. You would think that they would have enough capital to pay 5% to keep our ice cube frozen, at least in the bank. But you'd have to be more human to do that. You'd have to care about your fellow human out there, your fellow citizen out there, to actually compensate for the inflation that you created in the first place. You see, you'd have to care, but they don't. They still will have the audacity to give you 0 point whatever percent. And I'm not even talking about a CD or a tied up fund. I'm talking about actually giving, if I was in charge, and this would be a bill that I'd be trying to get through, is having commercial banks have to give interest rates that compensate for the current inflation rate. So if they say the inflation rate is 5%, the commercial banks should have to give 5% to compensate for that inflation rate, because you want an American to save, right? You want an American to keep their money in dollars and not go buy Bitcoin and silver and the things that I think is a much better investment than keeping your money in dollars that are guaranteed to go down in value at this point, in my opinion. That should be a bill that Elizabeth Warren should be talking about, not tricking people into having the citizens that didn't have the luxury of going to college and have to work and not have the luxury of taking 4 years off and going to, it's like, in what world is this? What world is this? Because you know what a kid needs? They need a internet connection. The youth needs internet connection. That's it. They can learn whatever they want. Today's day and age is a lot different. So why is college at all-time highs when I have a supercomputer in my pocket? Why is that? Why is college at all-time highs when I have a supercomputer in my pocket? Why would I pay $50,000 a year to go to some prestigious college, or it might even be more than that at this point? Why would I pay that much money for a business degree, let's say, or whatever it is, when I could just learn whatever I want to learn right there on my smartphone or on the internet? All the information is there at our disposal, and it wasn't even there 20 years ago. This is a completely new thing. The iPhone came out in 2007. It wasn't really as fast as it is now and as capable as it is now with a super camera on the back and ultra high speed internet and all of that until just as of recent, like within the last 5 years, 6 years. So this is all new stuff. All this big boom on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and all these different things. This is all new. And meanwhile, we're paying more money than ever before to go to a college that teaches us less than ever before to compensate for the current modern time that we're in. It's just completely backwards. But no, what we should do is let them continue to raise the prices of college, even though today's day and age, you should be having school systems compete with each other. That would be great, wouldn't it? Why should the government be in college in today's day and age when they're already pretty much doing classes from Zoom and all of that? It's a way more common thing to take a class via Zoom, where you could have just been watching a YouTube video and get way further ahead on that topic by listening to Anyway, if the government got out of college, I think the price of college would plummet. It would go down and it would be way more affordable. See, the reason why the rich go send their kids to a private school is because they can afford to pay that extra for that luxury. Now, what if all schools were private schools? If all schools across the board were private schools, then you'd have to see private schools competing for the incentive of actually making money. So you would have the master classes. I love that master class thing. You can learn from a professional for $200 a year. $200 a year, and you're learning from FBI, ex-FBI negotiators. You're learning from, Gordon Ramsay himself how to cook for $200 a year. Or you could go to some $50,000 a year college and learn from some other chef, but you could learn from Gordon Ramsay for $200 a year if you wanted to be a chef, let's say. Whatever, if you want to learn from business, you can literally hear, the cost of education is so cheap today. So the audacity that these students are getting enticed into these ridiculous government-given loans, and then they get put in the situation where they realize that the degree that they got actually turned out to be worthless, or it doesn't get you the same job to compensate for the amount of money that you took in. I mean, it's not a situation where you should just forgive and let the government continue to get away with what it's done. The government should try to fix the problem, and the problem is the government itself. My solution would be force the commercial banks to increase the interest rates on checking accounts, not on savings accounts. If you have $1 in an account with the bank, they should be paying the same rate as the current inflation rate on that capital, so that Americans can at least keep their ice cubes frozen. You would think they would do this at a bare minimum already, but they have the audacity to give you pretty much nothing on your money. That would be my first solution. So not just to talk about the problems, this would be if I was in Elizabeth Warren's position, I wouldn't just be trying to get people to rally on some bland statement with no real solution there by saying, hey, let's get all the Americans to pay off all the kids that didn't know how to balance a checkbook. They forgot to go to checkbook balancing 101 class, and now all the other Americans should pay for it. And we should keep increasing the cost of college too, and make sure we spend more money in there and find more things to waste money on. Fantastic job, Miss Warren. Elizabeth Warren. Really great idea. It's troubling to me that people fall for that, and I stand by all the things that I said on my Instagram. I said some pretty strong statements on my Instagram and on my Twitter. I recently started posting there a lot more. But that would be my main solution, is make the commercial banks have to actually give interest rates out that compensate for the inflation that they created. But then on top of that, I think the next thing that you should do is just get the government out of colleges in general, not let them give out these absolutely ridiculous loans to the youth that hasn't even learned the real business world yet. They just see an idea of going, you'll give me $100,000 and I can go there? And I can get away from my parents, and I can go to a dorm, and I can do all of that, and I can go to an overpriced dorm and pay way too much money to be there, and pay way too much money for these classes. And here's the other thing, a prerequisite. There should be, if you're paying for something, why in the world would there be a prerequisite? I'm so lost on that idea. You should learn what you want to learn. You should read what you want to read. But we have this idea of a prerequisite. To me, that's like a business loophole for them. It's like if I was trying to milk as much money as I could out of somebody, I would make them do prerequisites and make it last 4 years. You could learn most of these degrees and get more information in your head if you just learned the exact thing that you wanted to learn in 1 year flat. Boom, learn it. But no, you got to take all these prerequisites. I just want to learn basic math to do business. No. You have to do the prerequisite of trigonometry and calculus to get to this spot, or else you'll fall behind. You got to do this, and that. It's like, Well, I think I'm going to go and just learn from Gordon Ramsay how to cook. I want to be a chef, and I'm just going to learn from Gordon Ramsay for $200 a year. Or I'm going to go on YouTube and just watch YouTube videos on how to be an entrepreneur. Patrick Bet-David has some great stuff out there, that Valuetainment. It's free. Or maybe I'll pay the $18 or whatever for the YouTube premium, and then I'll have a situation where I don't have to watch ads and all of that. And I'll learn faster. But you want $50,000 and I got to take my prerequisites to get to that class, to do that, to do all these different things that I don't want to do. What it does is it makes, the youth bored, and they think they have, some sort of mental thing going on because they're so bored and they're not passionate. And then it is so damaging to allow this to continue in this path. What I would love to see is free market capitalism in its pure form in the college system and in the entire education system. You should allow it to be a capitalistic structure where they compete with each other to lower the price of things. Why is this iPhone here, this supercomputer, more powerful than the rocket that went on the moon? Why is this only $1,000? You get a used one for like $500, $800, a supercomputer, and people think that's expensive. That's nothing for this. That's nothing for this thing, because I was part of the generation that, if my flip phone had colors on it, that was amazing. That was the fancy thing. One time I had a smaller flip phone that was like, I think it was called Singular Wireless back then. That's how I'm old. 2027. But I remember when I had that singular wireless phone and it had a flip phone to it and it had colors on it. And I was like, man, I got the fancy phone on this one. But I was part of that generation that got to see the iPhone come to fruition and see what happened when YouTube got created in 2007 and all of that. And that's why I'm so excited to start this channel and keep building this channel and be able to talk about these issues. But the reason this iPhone is here and it's so cheap is because of competition. Apple wanted to beat Nokia. It wanted to beat Motorola. It wanted to beat Samsung. So it had the spirit to win. And because of that, you have this ridiculously beautiful device that has changed the world that we live in today because of competition. That same competition should be in the college system. We should not allow the people that created the problem to go to the people that didn't create the problem and say, hey, we created a problem and let these kids live in luxury and do this luxurious thing here, and we gave them bad loans and we overpriced the college system because we just don't even know how to run a business at all. We can't even balance a checkbook over here. Actually, we're almost at 30 trillion negative in our account. I don't even know why people give us loans over here. But anyway, why don't you pay for our problems that we created, and then we're not even going to change the problem. We're going to keep doing this thing. We're going to keep giving out these bad loans. We're going to keep allowing this money to get put into, just funnel all this money into these public colleges, these government-ran colleges, and we're going to continue to raise the rates and continue to entice the youth to go there. No, I don't agree with you, Elizabeth Warren, and I happen to think that you're completely flawed in your ideology. And I think that I think Americans should really consider the Libertarian Party. I think more Americans should be libertarians. I think it's the best of both worlds, and you understand that if the government just stopped going into these different places with the citizens' capital, it reminds me of these, like, you know, those Mr. Beast videos. You watch those Mr. Beast videos. If you haven't watched, look him up. Mr. Beast. He's like, I think he's one of the biggest YouTubers. Like, he's number 2 or 3. And he does these viral videos where he goes, I'm giving this individual $100,000, and this individual has to spend the $100,000 in a supermarket or in like a Best Buy or something. And he puts like a circle, and everything that they grab and put in the circle, they get to keep. They get it. So you get somebody that's like, we're gonna give me $100,000. They run, they grab PS3s, and they grab all this useless stuff, and they throw it in the center of the circle, and they feel so proud that they spent this $100,000 as fast as they did. That's the way the government spends the citizens' money. Like a Mr. Beast video. They take in the taxes and they spend so much that they overspend already what they took way too much of in the first place. It's literally like that. That's the best analogy that I can do, is relating it to a Mr. Beast video. So there were some people that didn't like the things that I had to say on Instagram and on Twitter and all of that, but I stand by it, and I'm not sorry for saying it, and I'm going to continue saying it. And my goal is that I want to give the information that might be bitter. Sometimes the best information is bitter. That's just the way it is. But I'm going to give information from my heart on this channel, and I hope that it helps people out there, because this is information that I wish I knew when I was 18. I wish I knew this, because I dropped out after 3 years at a community college, and the community college had just made me feel that I was a fish out of water. You know, I was a fish, and I was meant to be swimming, but I was trying to learn how to climb a tree or something. And it turned out that, hey, I didn't need to go to college to be an entrepreneur, and I might actually learn a lot more outside of college. And I have a whole story on how that all happened, and maybe that's for a later video. But I wanted to just elaborate a little bit on why I think it would be so much better if we just allowed colleges to be private. All colleges to be private. To not let only the rich send their kids to private school, but to let everyone go to private school, because private school is the only school, and they all compete with each other, and they all have to lower the prices and come up with better rates and offer more, a better education at a lower price to compete with the other person that's trying to compete in the education space. That's what we should have in the education system, not this ridiculous system of giving overpriced loans to students and then going to the citizens to bail out the ridiculous mistake that you made in the first place as the government. And if they really cared, they would do all these different things where it came to forcing the commercial banks to give an interest rate. That would be a good start. And then, another good start would be stop printing so much money and making it If you're holding a savings as a student, you're trying to pay down a debt, but you're losing 5% year over year on your capital because your ice cube is melting due to inflation, you're making it a lot harder for them to pay off these loans, right? And then they also have an interest rate accumulating on these loans as well because they're kind of trapped by this system. It's so wrong. It's so wrong. But it's not just about giving them the money and letting them not have to pay anything for the luxury that they got. No, what it should be about is stopping the problem that created it in the first place. That's what this should be about. Not just, there's so much of this kick the can down the road, kick the can down the road, kick the can down the road. Maybe we should stop kicking it and just find out what's wrong in the first place so we don't have to kick the can down the road anymore. Maybe that should be the situation. And maybe we should figure out how to grow the cans instead of continuing to kick it down the road. With that being said, that's my little rant here on college and what I think is wrong with it and why I disagree so strongly with Elizabeth Warren. Thank you so much for watching my videos. I hope that there was some valuable information there. If there was, please smash that like button. It really, really does help get this information out there. So if you could turn that like button from green to blue, it's down there somewhere and it really wants to turn blue and it would really help this video reach out to more people. If you dislike the video, then dislike it and put in a comment below why you think I'm wrong about this so we can have this type of discussion because that's healthy. That's how we learn. Please do subscribe to the channel if you would like to hear more videos like this, more videos on business and education. That is the topics that I like to go over in this channel, specifically more in the financial space. So would love to have you as a subscriber. Thank you again for watching. Signing out.